Hi, welcome back to the channel. In this video we will look at essential concepts such as reality, consciousness, the self and the sense of I-ness or ego from the point of view of the teachings of the ancient Indian philosophy Advaita Vedanta. Our goal is to make these deeply philosophical concepts accessible and applicable so that you may enhance your consciousness and grow spiritually. If you're interested to learn more about Advaita Vedanta, you can find links to other YouTube videos in the description box below. Also, I'm going to integrate a couple of quotes from a philosophical paper written by Wolfgang Fasching. That too will be linked below. Let's get started. In Advaita Vedanta, the concept of ultimate reality is encapsulated in the term Brahman. Picture Brahman as the vast ocean encompassing all existence, yet remaining singular and unchangeable despite the storms on its surface. Unlike the world we interact with, which is transient and subject to change, much like the waves on the ocean, Brahman, the totality of the ocean, is constant and eternal. The physical world, which we perceive through our physical senses, is termed Maya. Maya is like a magic show, both fascinating and deceptive, making the impermanent seem permanent and the unreal seem real. Our ordinary reality, where things appear distinct and separate from one another, is a part of this grand illusion. According to Advaita Vedanta, this separation is illusory. Everything at its core is Brahman, connected through and equal to the vast ocean. This viewpoint challenges us to rethink our understanding of existence. When we recognize fully that the world is a temporary state and not the ultimate reality, we begin the journey toward true knowledge and liberation. Advaita Vedanta posits that consciousness, or Chit, is a universal, all-encompassing awareness. Imagine consciousness as the sky, ever-present, vast, and unaffected by the clouds or weather patterns within it. This universal consciousness is integral to reality, existing without duality, meaning it recognizes no distinction between subject and object. In our daily lives, we experience consciousness individually. However, these individual experiences are simply manifestations of the one, infinite consciousness of Brahman. When you watch a theatre play, for example, you might identify with individual characters and feel their emotions and momentarily forget yourself. Yet, when the curtain falls, you remember who you are. This is akin to the realization in Advaita Vedanta, where individual consciousnesses merge with the universal consciousness. Understanding that your personal consciousness is part of a greater whole can profoundly change how you interact with the world. It encourages a sense of connection and unity with others. It reduces egoistic tendencies and it fosters compassion. In Advaita Vedanta, the self, or Atman, is considered the true essence of an individual. Imagine finding a precious gem buried under layers of rock. Similarly, Atman lies hidden beneath the layers of our body, our emotions and thoughts. Realizing this self involves peeling away all these layers that reveal that Atman and Brahman are not just connected, they are essentially one. The self is often described as the witness consciousness, observing but not partaking in the body's actions or the mind's chatter. Just as the moon reflects the sunlight but does not emit any light of its own, the self reflects the consciousness of Brahman. This understanding that you are the observer of your experiences and not merely the experiences themselves can be liberating. With this realization, you can face life's challenges with greater equanimity and detachment, knowing that the true self is separate from the worldly identities and roles that we play allows us to engage with life in a more measured way and without being overwhelmed by its ups and downs. Ahamkara, or the ego, is the sense of I-ness that identifies with the body and mind. It is like a mask that we wear, believing it to be our true face. The ego is responsible for the feelings of separation, the me versus you and the mine versus yours. In Advaita Vedanta, the idea is that the I that we feel inside us isn't really something we can point to or describe. It's not the same as our physical bodies or our thoughts and feelings. For example, you can imagine yourself being a completely different person with a different body and different thoughts. Yet you can still feel that there's a core I that remains unchanged. This core I is what Advaita Vedanta refers to. It suggests that this pure I is something deep and unchanging, and it's not tied to any of the changing parts of who we are or can imagine ourselves to be. The true I is something beyond all the things we normally think make up ourselves. Every day our ego navigates through a myriad of social interactions and personal decisions, often reinforcing our sense of individuality. Consider how a child builds a sandcastle, claiming it as their own and defending it against the incoming waves. Similarly, the ego builds and defends its identities. In Advaita Vedanta, spiritual growth involves seeing through this illusion, recognizing that the ego self is just part of Maya. By understanding that the ego is not the ultimate reality, one can begin to dissolve the barriers that it constructs, experiencing the unity of Atman with Brahman. When discussing Advaita Vedanta, the term soul is frequently used in English translations and discussions. This is done with the intention of making concepts more understandable to individuals who are not familiar with Sanskrit philosophy. It is important to note that the term soul does not adequately capture the subtleties of the Sanskrit terms that are utilized in Advaita Vedanta, specifically Atman and Brahman. Many spiritual traditions hold the belief that the soul is eternal and that it undergoes a cycle of rebirths. This concept of rebirth or reincarnation is central to several Eastern philosophies and religions. In these traditions, the essence of a person is seen as continuing through various lifetimes until it reaches a state of liberation or enlightenment. However, Advaita Vedanta posits that what is reborn is not a soul as a distinct individual entity, but rather a karmic imprint, a bundle of desires, impressions, and karma accumulated from previous lives. This bundle drives the cycle of birth and rebirth. The true self, or Atman, is beyond birth and death and is essentially one with Brahman at all times. It does not reincarnate because it never was born and it's never subject to death. So in Advaita Vedanta, although there is no individual soul traveling from one body to another, the continuity of karma is maintained through karmic seeds and tendencies. It's probably best to envision those as non-physical thought forms or energies. Until we realize the true nature of the self, that we are Atman, not the body, mind or ego, this cycle of rebirth and karma continues. Consequently, the ultimate goal is the realization of one's true identity as Atman, being identical with Brahman. This realization, often called self-realization or enlightenment, dissolves the illusions of individuality and separateness. With this realization, the cycle of karma and rebirth is transcended, as there is the recognition that the true self was never really bound by these processes in the first place. When we view all existence as interconnected and fundamentally united, several practical ethical implications naturally follow. Let's look at them one by one and see how we can translate them into our daily lives and into our routines. When you see no real division between yourself and others, the natural response is to treat others with the same kindness and understanding that you wish for yourself to be treated. This empathy is not limited to human interactions, but extended to all living beings. This is hard to do, especially when you are confronted with difficult people in your life. Something I found helpful is to see difficult people that trigger something in you as your best teachers. Rather than viewing them as villains that you want to push away and fight against, try to regard them as teachers. Withdraw from the heated situation and ask yourself, what is this person or situation showing me about myself? Why do they manage to trigger me so much? What can I learn from this? When you do, you will find that the difficulties you experience begin to soften, because essentially you are starting to overcome them. There will over time be the experience that you are not triggered anymore. Closely related to compassion is the principle of non-violence. Recognizing the sacredness of all life leads to minimizing harm in all its forms. Try to avoid causing physical or emotional harm to other living beings and instead try to be positive and constructive. One insight that helped me was that usually when we see someone in the street, we tend to give out labels instantly in our minds. You will catch yourself thinking things like, oh, this person looks fat, or that person seems to be rude, or whatever. It's almost like you are putting little sticky notes on people's foreheads, rating them according to your value system and your life experience. Once you become aware of this tendency to distribute mental sticky notes, you can try not to do that anymore. Instead, try to regard yourself and everyone else as one individual expression of that same vast ocean. We are all different in our expressions, and that is okay. The source of much of our suffering is attachment to the transient aspects of life, such as material possessions, social status, and even personal relationships. A practical application of Advaita Vedanta in everyday life would therefore involve cultivating detachment and simplicity. This doesn't necessarily mean abandoning worldly life, but rather engaging with it in a way that is not dictated by selfish desires or ego-driven impulses. A good way to practice detachment is to, for instance, question an impulse or stimulus when it happens. If, for instance, you see something in an online store and you instantly want to buy this thing, ask yourself, do I really need this? What purpose will it serve? Could I do without it? you will find that in 8 out of 10 cases, you will be able to curb your impulse. If you truly understand and internalize the notion that all is one, deceptive practices towards others become not only unethical but also self-defeating. This includes honesty in communication, fairness in transactions, and authenticity in actions. When you start practicing any type of spirituality, you will be amazed at how many times a day you commit a white lie or act unfairly. With time, you will develop a degree of sensitivity that leads you to hurt when others do. Your empathy will naturally increase and you will start noticing instant karma as well. The minute you cross the line, you will feel bad, or you will trip and fall, or something will happen that confirms your wrongdoing. This can become quite comical. You can feel like the whole universe is suddenly conspiring against you, but really what it is that you start to recognize and feel the consequences of everything and everyone being interconnected. As with all spiritual traditions, the real test is not in understanding concepts, but in applying them in everyday life and developing consistency. Oftentimes it feels like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of process. By integrating concepts and insights from Advaita Vedanta in your daily life, you can transcend your sense of separation and connect more deeply with both yourself and the world around you. These values and attitudes not only enhance your personal spiritual growth, but also contribute to creating a more peaceful and harmonious world. I hope this was helpful and worth your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.